weeks 9 and 10, here we go again. In this period, I've ditched the brace for pretty much everything. Stability is increasing, strength is increasing. It's really starting to feel like a normal knee, which is excellent. Let's go through a bit of an update on the knee here. Still quite a bit smaller than the uninjured leg, but actually looking quite nice. A little bit of quad definition. You can see the key muscles there. The kneecap's pretty nice. ROM's great comparatively to other weeks. Able to sit in a deep squat pretty much. Here's a view of the knee. Posterior chains coming back nicely with the loading. Calves coming back nicely with the loading. Overall, I'm really pleased with the progress. At the end of the 10-week mark, I've started TB-500 and BP-157. Key reasons for this is really the first injury where I've genuinely felt overwhelmed, not just from the pain, the risk of never moving the same again. I'm already putting in a huge amount of effort into the rehab. I'm not using peptides to speed things up. I'm hoping to improve the quality of the repair, get myself better tissue, better movement, less long-term issues. And if there's really a 10 or a 20% edge that I can get here, I'll take it. In my research, I've come across a large amount of positive commentary from well-regarded doctors in the regenerative and functional medicine space. They're peptides, which are small proteins that promote healing, reduce inflammation, and increase blood flow, which is really beneficial for a tendon injury where you're generally not getting much blood flow. BPC works systemically and targets injured tissue, while TB-500 helps with cell migration and repair. Some people report faster healing, less pain, better tissue quality, but these are definitely not risk-free. Most data is from animal studies, and there are concerns about tumor growth if you have any underlying issues. I'm working with a doctor, starting on a lower dose and tracking everything closely. Key goals for the period, still working on the gait. It's in a pretty good position at the moment. Week 10 was cleared to start concentric loading, which is excellent. Still continuing to improve the isometric strength. I'm going to be layering isometric movements throughout the whole rehab process and going forward to ensure tendon strength and integrity. Working to increase the end range of that knee flexion ROM. It's in a great position at the moment. Progressive posterior chain loading, really pumping the volume and the weight. Working on motor control and proprioception, trying to improve that. And also just working to monitor that load and tweak the protocol if the swelling or the pain is too high. As I mentioned in one of my previous updates, pain is a really useful indicator in this process. Now the swelling is not as intense. Using pain as a barometer for if my volume is correct is super important. I never push into pain, and the skill is programming in a manner to maximize the amount of stimulus and load into the injured leg without bringing too much pain. Look at the general pain scores. Down to the right, still a little bit of a difference in the pain in the morning and the evening, as the protocol is quite intense at the moment, but pretty good improvement. Looking at a couple of measurements here, body weight, definitely starting to reverse that around the 90 kilo mark. Looking at the thigh measurements, I've also added in here a lower 1/3 thigh circumference as well, which I think is a really useful measurement. So looking at the bars here, which is the percentage, sitting at around 90% of the good quad size. So pretty good, but a bit of work to do here. ROM in a great position at the moment with the passive style. I can get to about 130, getting to about 120 in the seated active, and in the prone around 110, really getting towards pre-injury ROM. If we go across to the stiffness and swelling, I'm at about 94%, meaning there's still a little bit of a gap I need to close in the evening in terms of ROM compared to the morning, but I think that's still normal, especially now that I'm in this concentric loading phase. Able to grab my foot here and do a quad stretch, which is a pretty good feeling. I generally do this after a block on the bike. Little bit more active ROM stuff here. Once again, I'm not pushing this very hard. I'm just moving in and out and making it slightly dynamic to get a little bit of extra ROM, just trying to make it stay feeling pretty nice. The bike, absolute staple for me every session. If it's a quad loading session, I'll generally do 15 to 30 minutes at a warm-up pace when I'm not loading the quad, I'll do up to an hour and go quite intense. It is nice to do some lower body cardio and sweat, which is the first time in a while. My seat's actually lower than I would normally have it to get a little bit of extra ROM. Looking at the gait here, pleased with the progress. The key goals was that shift weight over as I was walking, and actually I needed to eke out a little bit more of that knee extension. So I was working a lot of those terminal knee extensions to allow my foot to strike and that leg to stay straight instead of bending. And I think it's translated to reasonably good gait. Okay. Bit of steps here up to our bedroom. So going up the stairs, pretty much no worries at all. I think in the coming weeks, I'll probably add Stairmaster into the program for extra cardio gains. On the way down, the eccentric control is a bit more challenging, but coming along. Quick look at the step count. We're probably in 9,000 plus steps a day. I'll expect this to plateau at around 10,000. Once I start to be able to run, I expect the step count to come up quite a bit, which would be good. Quick look at the leg strength stuff. Week 10, we're doing 130 kilo, really jumped up there, and we're holding this for about 140 seconds, getting quite strong. We'll probably replace this with another metric, maybe like front squat strength going forward, but we'll see. Here we are into the quad loading, finally being cleared for concentric loading, which is excellent. I've broken down my quad loading protocol for the next few weeks as follows. I have a quad and tendon focused lift. So you can see the heel elevated front squat here, which is really targeting that tendon and that quad to build strength there. I'll have a day off the quad loading. I'm doing rehab every single day, but I'm not loading the quad every day. After a day off, I'll hit isometrics. This week I'm doing Bulgarian isometrics, pushing the weight, and I'm really pushing how long I'm holding this for. You can see how hard I'm working here. Isometrics will be a staple throughout this whole rehab process and permanently going forward, just for the benefits in terms of the tendon strength, but also really strong carryover into sport. The next day I've got another concentric lift, but always focusing on that slow controlled eccentric, the pause down the bottom. This concentric lift is something that I can bring the knee a little bit back and not track so far over the foot, and really focus on loading that quad muscle and easing off the tendon to focus on muscle building. Leg extensions, fucking hard. Leg extensions are probably one of the last things to come with this injury because it puts quite a lot of load directly on that tendon. Great to get started on the machine. Really happy to be able to start and just progress this over time. Posterior chain in quite a good spot at the moment, to be honest. So the single leg RDLs with about 32 kilos, 12 controlled reps this week in a really good position. The stability is there, the strength is there. So I'm just going to continue to push these. Kickstand RDLs, absolutely loving these, really allowing me to pump a bunch of volume into my hamstring and not have to worry as much about the stability, but also not have as much compensation from my uninjured side when I'm doing a straight RDL. So these are a staple in the program at the moment, at least for the next few weeks until I get a little bit closer to the uninjured leg in terms of my stability and compensation. The back hyperextensions, I touched on these in the last update. I'm still doing these. I'm continuously increasing the load. I just really love building up that lower back again. It's quite a long time since I've been able to do a movement like this. So this is a staple in my weekly program, even when I'm not injured. Leg curls, continuously improving week on week, getting stronger, more explosive and powerful. You can see that I'm now trying to move to more bilateral movements, and that's because there's a neurological benefit. Calves, recovering really well. I'm able to load these heavily at the moment, really focusing on the eccentric, the pause and the stretch down the bottom, and a more powerful concentric. There's not too much pressure on the patella tendon here, so that's in a great position. Something I forgot to cover in my last update, I've been doing tib raises. These are generally quite a good exercise for knee health. For my hip flexors and hip work, what I'm actually doing for my abduction is really starting to push the weight on the banded walks and the monster walks, and I'm getting a lot more of a better response there. Also feels just a bit more functional for the knee. On the adduction side, I'm still using the machine a little bit, but I'm also starting to incorporate more athletic and advanced movements. I'm starting to do things like the Copenhagen plank, which is really good for stability and strength in the groin and adductors. For the hip flexors, I do a lot of leg raises with my core, also playing around with band work those hip flexors, still doing the hip flexor lifts over a foam roller, for example. I'm in the pool probably every second day, I'm doing a cardio block and quite a bit of pool running. It feels nice to mimic the movement of running, but with less force going into the tendon. Lastly, a bit of proprioception and balance work. I touched on this in the last update. I'm going to be doing this every single week, and maybe I'll cover one or two of the exercises that I'm doing. I'm doing some touches with my hands here, and the next one I'm just doing like the toe touches, which is what you would do in like a Y balance test. If you've gotten this far, really appreciate you watching. I hope it's helpful. If you've had an injury like this or you're rehabbing an injury like this, there's no single session that is going to fix your injury or bring you back to sport. It is the culmination of small efforts every single day, and I believe and have been applying that thought process throughout this. I feel like I am progressing at a pretty rapid rate. Thank you very much, and see you next time.